Today I want to talk about some of the things that I've done on PvE mode that have helped me out when it comes to both farming money, leveling up my account, and a wide variety of other different things that have generally just been very helpful, and I wanted to compact them all down into one video. If that sounds good, then make sure to like the video and let's get into it. So first things first, there is one big thing that you need to get, and that comes with the flea market. Once you get access to the flea market, the game becomes extremely easier, primarily because you can go out and buy some of the gear that you may not have access to at the beginning of the game. So if you're a beginner player and you haven't got to level 15, this is something that is very, very valuable. And if you are a player that's been playing the game for a long time and you don't really know exactly how you can pick up some of the better gear in the game, you want to be going for all of the items such as, for example, Corons with level 4, level 5 and level 6 plates. With running these sorts of armors, they provide the best armor areas, which are going to be vital for you surviving your raids and generally just saving you a lot of the times against some of the broken AI which can be in the game. They're not particularly too difficult once you do learn how to combat them, but if you do get caught out in certain areas, they can be very, very dangerous, especially if you're looking at any of the bosses, which will go straight through level 4 plates, so having better armor is something very, very useful. Of course, Corond isn't the only thing. You can go for a much cheaper option with something like the Cuirassa. You've got a wide variety of different armors, but primarily using the best ones that you have available, the Gazelles for example, or even running rigs that have a decent coverage of armor plates, especially since the armor update, which came with the relatively recent patch and essentially changing how the armor models work. They cover the armor much better, and so you're not getting weird shells or rounds going into your armpit and ending taking you out. It's much better now, and so picking decent armor is probably the best advice I can do in terms of improving your survival and just making things that little bit easier. You'll notice that this is one of the first things I've talked about, so armor and getting yourself prepped with your gear early on is going to save you so much time of grinding through raids only to be taken out by one of the AI who manages to thorax you or hits you in an armor area that could have been covered, which is why it's so important to get this as one of the first things on your character. It doesn't matter about getting early game money in terms of actual being able to progress your account, because that comes much later, and in fact will come as you get towards level 30ish and the grinds start becoming a lot longer. You'll find that you'll just naturally pick up millions of rubles just by playing the game, so grinding them out at the beginning can be a good way of getting yourself the early game gear. But once you have that gear, you'll pretty much always get it back from insurance, provided that you're not playing in a group and that you don't die in that group and then your teammates either take it out, or if the teammates run away from where your loot is, AI can actually go and pick it up, provided it's better than the gear they're wearing, and then they can extract, which can mean that you lose it in insurance. But that's only for group play, not solo play on PvE. If you're playing solo, it pretty much comes back every single raid. And so with that being said, obviously you want a decent weapon, and primarily if you are a player that hasn't played a huge amount of Tarkov, or you're a player that just wants to make it as easy as possible running through all of the tasks, I'd highly recommend not using DMRs, not using bolt action rifles, and running some of the M4s and of course some of the fully automatic weapons that you have available to you, especially at the beginning. Running 60 round mags can be a decent starting point to kind of give you that little bit of flexibility in a gunfight. That means that, you know, if you do potato aim, at least you've got the 60 round mags, for example, to be able to actually fire their ball off and hopefully after 60 rounds take them out. And that means that if there's multiple opponents who do push you, then you can deal with them as well in one go. Now obviously we do have to talk about money, and you're going to have to get money in order to farm up a decent amount of it to be able to purchase some of the better gear and make that experience going through the game that much easier. But there are a ton of ways to make money on this game if you are specifically after making some money. I'd I'd recommend it for maybe the first couple of levels as you get used to the game mode and just to earn a bit of money to then get that gear that I've talked about earlier. So farming up about 5 million rubles should get you everywhere that you need to, and that's only literally about 2 raids if you're doing the right loot run. I have done quite a few loot run guides on the channel which you can go and take a look at. They're in a playlist which is linked down below in the description of this video. You can see the loot runs that we've done, including Lighthouse. We have one on Labs if you do manage to get yourself some of the key cards, which they are definitely worth picking up, and that is kind of the second area of the loot if you're after making some money. Labs is a brilliant way of making some money, and at the minute the key cards are relatively expensive, making it quite difficult to accumulate it. But that's where the other loot runs come in order for you to be able to actually buy those key cards. And if we type in the labs, we can go to, for example, the black key card, which is probably the most consistent money maker on labs in general, only costing 4.2 million on average at the moment. Just from quick selling the stims that I get, I can make anywhere from 700 to 1.1 million just from the black room itself, just for one raid, which covers the cost of any gear that you take into labs. Remember, labs, if you go in there, any gear that you take in, even if it's insured, will be lost. So if you're playing labs and you've insured your gear, it doesn't matter. It will be lost. It will never come back on insurance. And so with that being said, you may want to take slightly worse gear into labs if you're worried about losing money and your primary motive is to make money. And so you can just earn more money, and the run itself in order to get to black keycard is really not too bad, and there's not too many dangers to really get there. It's only really when you start going to red room from the other side of the map and that sort of stuff that it becomes a little bit more dangerous. But even then, labs, once you learn how to play it on PvE, isn't too bad either. Now we jump back to the gear. One of the biggest things that you can take into your raids is grenades, and that sounds very weird, but it is genuinely so helpful, because not only when you throw a grenade will you hear the voice lines of both the scavs and of course the PMCs that are close to you, provided that you haven't just spammed grenades every 2 seconds, you will hear them. It takes about 20 seconds for the PMCs and AI to then recover, and then they're able to voice line again essentially. So it kind of, they have a delay between when they can voice line and voice line again. So you want to wait 20 seconds if you didn't quite catch where their location was. But even if you did, you can use the grenades to then chuck them at them, and then what happens is the AI start running, and the AI will just bolt it to like the nearest area of cover, or they'll just run out into the middle of a street or run into a building, and whilst they're doing that you can pre-aim and then shoot them as they're running out of the way. And then we talk about one of the ways in which you can learn the AI slightly better, and that comes with Factory. Factory is of course a very close-knit group of PMCs, and of course the boss Tagilla, and a ton of scavs that do spawn every single time that you run Factory, which means that there is a lot of combat engagements, and so you can learn and iterate how you deal with the PMCs very quickly. And so I would recommend at the beginning to run quite a few Factory raids to get used to both the weapon that you're using, and also in order to learn how the AI react to you with both grenades and of course with pre-aiming doors and stuff like that as they come running towards you and charging towards you. This is something that has worked very well for me, and it gave me enough experience with the PvE when I first started to, you know, easily enjoy playing all of the other maps with really no particular troubles or worries other than the bosses in the game. And so Factory really does have its place, and if you want a way of farming Factory for both the gear and of course if you want to farm XP, which Factory gives you a ton of, there's a guide as well in the description of this video. Now the next biggest thing is to focus on completing all of your early game tasks, and the best way to do this is by combining all of the tasks into one specific map. And so you make sure that on every single map that you are going to be playing, when you're trying to maximize how many tasks you complete, is going to your character screen, clicking on the task button and then setting it to location. This will give you a filtered list of all of the maps where you have all of the quests assigned to each of the maps, and that way you can go through and you can find find out which maps have the most amount of quests for you to complete. As you can see here, I have a ton of streets tasks because they're not required for Kappa, and so that's why I've got a ton of them, and I haven't really done much in terms of the streets tasking, so we'll be working through that in the next few weeks. But in terms of the rest of them, you can see I've got 2 interchange tasks, and then what you can do is you can click on the first one and the second one and see if they're if they coincide with one another. Maybe they require you to take out scavs whilst using a respirator, but also the other task is to take out scavs with a shotgun, and then you can also double check down on the enemy location to see if there's other tasks you can complete that require you to take out scavs, for example. And that means that you can effectively complete 3 tasks at the same time without doing any extra effort. Of course, then you also get the bonuses of getting your traders leveled up. And this is something you should focus on as quickly as possible when it comes to Tarkov, because the biggest benefit of all of this is the unlocks of various different weapons. You have the unlock of different ammunition types, which is probably the biggest thing for Tarkov, is being able to buy some better ammo than what you typically have available at the beginning. For example, being able to purchase BT ammo, which pens level 3 and 4 for 545, and then obviously if you get different ammunition, for example BT ammunition for the GZH going through level 5, whereas the starting ammunition is primarily slightly worse, and generally you cannot buy some of the trader ammunition from the flea market, which means that the only way to get it is by doing the tasks and getting your traders leveled up so that you can purchase it. As you can see, this is the only way of purchasing this ammunition or finding it in raid, which does happen, but it's not consistent and it's not going to be a way for you to actually get a reliable amount of ammunition if you're firing it a lot of the time in your main gun. Of course, the secondary bonuses of all of the kind of tasks and completing the task is it upgrades your hideout, which is one of the very, very useful things for Escape from Tarkov PvE in general, because the faster that you can upgrade your hideout to the maximum levels, the faster you can level up all of your hideout related skills, which allow you to get better bonuses to all of your skills in your character. As you can see, I've got my hideout management at level 37, which gives me a bonus to all percentage bonuses by 7%, which means that, for example, if I go to my heating, I am getting 133 EP per hour, and my negative effects removal rate is 68.5. And then if I go over to my intelligence center, you can see that I have a scav cooldown timer of 47.95%, which means I can almost go into 2 scav raids for every single person that doesn't have any bonuses to their scav cooldown timer. And that means, it's just much faster to get into raids. You also have things like, for example, leveling up your physical much faster. This gives you a 40% bonus when I do actually have an air filter in. I haven't got one in at the moment. But similarly, you have various different things that happen, like the library, which gives you a bonus to the raid XP that you're getting every raid. So at the minute, I got 20.55% bonus. And my skill group leveling is 41.1, I believe, at the beginning of this. It's a 30% bonus, and so that 37% bonus upgrade is coming in there to give us even more XP per raid, and of course even more level up to my physical stats and skills within my character, which is very, very good, because this can be a pain in the backside having low endurance and low strength in your raids. And of course you can go through and level these up, elite them, and that is just going to make things a hell of a lot easier for going through your raids as you go through and complete all of the rest of your tasks as you go. And so always upgrade your hideout as quickly as possible if you're purely after essentially maximizing your character and your character progression. If you enjoy looting, do whatever you want. This is Escape from Tarkov. I'm just telling you that's kind of the optimal way, or at least a efficient-ish way of actually going through Tarkov. There is probably a better way out there, but for me, this has definitely been the way that I went, and I upgraded my hideout as quickly as possible, and I haven't looked back since, and I think I would recommend it for most people out there. and it gives you opportunity to make a ton of money. And that comes back to the whole money making, is that the hideout can make you a ton of money. For example, my med station level 3 gives me the access to a defibrillator barter, which if we have a look at the price of a defib, it's 1.4 million. If we go and have a look at the price of a power bank, they're 550k. And then we look at, for example, capacitors, call them 40k, so that's 160k, so looking at about 700k there. And then you look at some wires, which you need 3 of, so call that like 60k or something like that, so 760k plus 2 magnets, call them 100k each, that's 910k. And then of course the actual defib is worth 1.44 million. Of course, when you try and sell the defib on the market, it will cost you a decent amount in Flea commission, but it's usually only about 100k, so you're still making in the region of about 400k for doing something that literally takes you about 1 second, or maybe not, but like 30 seconds, right, to buy all of the stuff and then put it on. And if you buy in bulk, you can just keep doing it over and over and over again without having to go and buy them each time, and I'd recommend that as well, and just storing them in a thick case if you've got one, an items case if you've got one, or just simply a scav junk box if you've got one of those, which is once again something that you should pick up early game. Scav junk box is this bad boy right here, where you can put all of the trash loot that you get from your raids and pop it in here and then go through and sell everything all at once. That is what I always do in my raids to save myself time and essentially not have to list every individual item every time that I do a raid. I have a thick items case, which you can just have a normal items case if you haven't got the money or you're a beginner player, for example. And that way you can just store all of the bits that you can't put in a scav junk box, or at least bits that, you know, you want to sell immediately or whatever. Some of the stuff I can put into a scav junk box, but if you can't, then you put them in the items case, and then I go ahead and sell all of this all in one go, and that way, you know, you can make money quicker and with less time by selling them to traders and that sort of stuff. Same thing with, for example, I have a raid box with a load of medicine, and usually I will have a couple of these medicine cases filled with only stims, and this is where I pop all of my stims. So if I'm doing labs runs, for example, I will grab out my medicine case, put it in my stash somewhere, usually near the top, so I'd clear my stash, I'd put it there, and then I'd drop all of the stims in there really quickly and go back into the next raid instantly afterwards. And then after about 2 or 3 runs, I will then go ahead and sell all of the stims all at once, and that just saves me a bit of time, and it means that I can just play how I want to and then sell things when I maybe don't want to go into a raid. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is traders are actually very, very good for getting you money. And that might seem very weird, but at the moment, as of the recording of this video, it might change in the future. So if you're watching this in 3-4 months time, or whenever you're watching this, at the moment, you do not have to find things in raid to sell them on the Flea. You can sell non-found in raid items, but that means that any barters that you do, you can sell the barter item that you get from it. And so, for example, the sick case is worth 4.2 million, and you require all of these items in order to make the barter trade for the sick case. You need 12 paracords, you need 15 duct tape, 15 tape, and 15 nails. Check the prices of all of these. You spend 3 million and you can sell the sick case for 4.1 million at the moment of this video, which means you make 1 million rubles from, once again, a quick 30-second thing or a minute thing to buy all of the items and do it. And that's how I've been able to get up to about 1.13 billion at the minute. But either way, that is what I did, and some of the things that I would give you as some tips as to starting PvE and things to focus on. I appreciate this video is relatively long, but I thought all of the points in here were useful to people and just some general guidance tip for PvE. If you enjoyed today's video and you made it this far, you're an absolute legend. And of course, if you want to join me back on some of the other videos, then if you haven't already subscribed, then feel free to subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next one.